Hi, I am Angel Ribo with Mindalia TV, and we are here today with William Arntz. Hi, William, how are you?
Very good, thank you.
Awesome, it's great to have you here today. So I would like to start the conversation asking you, what's that thing that you're most passionate about?
What am I most passionate about? Boy, it depends on the day. But for today, what I'm most passionate about is I'm here with my lovely wife, and we're doing a presentation. It's called The Mystic and the Physicist. And it's looking at really the world through those two lenses, through the mystic and the physicist. And my professional career, I started off as a physicist.
Right. So you're going to be the physicist in the presentation?
Yeah, you wouldn't want me as the mystic. No, that just wouldn't work, no.
Why not? I mean, everybody knows that you have actually kind of one of the movies that you actually made was or represented really a very important part of the mystic world today, I would say that.
Yes, but that's a little different than a mystic who really has visions, or will really be walking down the street and the trees talk to them. I mean, a mystic lives in another world and also in this one. And I'm relatively well grounded in this world. So at that point, I let the mystic do their thing.
When you were making that very famous movie, were you really grounded when you started it?
Well, I got this idea. Well, I had always been interested in spirituality and science and how they come together. So it really started off as kind of looking at the parallels between the two, which is more of an intellectual exercise. But the more I got into it, you know, any artist really is somewhat of a mystic. I mean, you're using your intuition, you just get a notion like, oh, we have to talk about this, and then sometimes you come up later with it. So as I got more and more into the material, eventually what happens is, you know, you think as a filmmaker, you think, oh, I'm going to figure this movie out and it's going to do this thing. And it starts that way, and at a certain point it goes like this, and the movie starts telling you what to do. And then you just kind of have to listen. You have to just shut up and do what the movie says, and that's what happened.
What was the main challenge at that time for you?
The main challenge was I wanted the movie to be entertaining. I wanted it to be fun to watch. I wanted because if you just have it intellectual, people go, oh, that's nice, and then kind of forget about it. But if you can ground it emotionally, when part of this is in the film, by bringing it emotional, by bringing it into you physiological, it really lands. So I wanted to have a story. So the hardest part was having this dramatic story that's humor and poignant at times, and you have these intellectual talking heads, and how do you bring it together so it works? And that was the hard part, and that took about a year of editing to finally get it all to fit together.
A year of editing?
Of editing, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
What did the Bleep movie represented in your career?
Well, it's something, when I was a kid, I wanted to make movies. It was, you know, I thought, oh, but then I went to school and did physics and sort of went down that path, and then later got into computers. But I'd always had this nagging thing that, oh, I want to make movies. And so after I had a couple software companies, and after I sold the second one, I realized I had some money laying around and I could just make a movie. So I thought I'd make a little documentary. So it started off as just this little documentary, but once I got into it, again, the movie started talking, and pretty soon it ended up being a big production. And so it kind of was something I'd always wanted to do. And I'd never really done movies before, so that was that. I guess I'm a one-hit wonder.
Was it an inflection point in your life?
Well, after that, it was something, you know, when there's something you've always wanted to do, once you do it, what I experienced, and I had the same thing with the software companies. I always wanted to do something and be successful in technology and make a lot of money. And then it's this mountain you want to climb, and then you climb it, and you kind of expect, like, oh, now I'm going to be sitting on top of the world and life's going to be good, and that's true for a little bit, and then So again, making the film was that way. I thought, oh, this is so great. If only it would be successful, and it was successful. And I was very happy about that. And then, you know, a year later, it's kind of like, okay. But that's life. You know, you have these experiences, you do these things, you get inspired, and then you achieve it. And you kind of get to this notion like, well, is life just about achieving? And that's when it really landed for me. There's something more than just the achieving of exterior goals.
What is life about, William?
Well, I'm still working on that one. I'm still working, and it changes. So now that I've done those, you know, things in the outer world, it's really about, to tell you the truth, it's about finding joy and peace.
What are you doing today to find that joy and peace? Maybe today's presentation is part of it?
Yeah, today's presentation I do with my wife is, you know, we really enjoy it. It's a lot of fun. We get up there, you know, we sort of banter back and forth, and it is fun. In fact, she and I have been talking recently, and sort of our new mantra is, if it's not fun, we're not going to do it. Because it's very easy, and especially in this world, people get so wrapped up in achieving and doing and crossing all the T's and dotting the I's that, you know, it's the old thing, smell the roses. And you know, I've done enough of the crossing T's and dotting I's. It's rose time.
Let's go back to your inner world. What would you say is your search that you are which is undergoing in your inner world right now?
A lot of the inner world these days is just what we refer to as the silent watcher, and it's just kind of watching the mental patterns and watching. You know how sometimes you'll be walking down the street and you're feeling pretty good, and suddenly you just kind of don't feel so good, or you get a little depressed. It's like, whoa, what just happened? Where did that come from? And so the silent watcher, the inner work is first off noticing when those things happen, and then going, wow, I wonder what's that all about. And one thing I've noticed recently, sometimes you'll be walking along and you have a little dip. I call them the little dip. You have a little dip and suddenly you're not feeling good. If you're aware of that, then you say, oh, that was a little dip, huh? And then you sort of go back. But if you're not aware of it, the little dip can become a bigger dip, and then you're down in the, you know, it can just take you down. So I've just been logging how that happens and finding, you know, is there anything that I'm doing? Maybe it is, maybe not. But again, the whole self-discovery, wondering what's really going on in there. And, you know, when you're always going out and charging up mountains, you don't really think about that because you're charging up a mountain.
You've been a very successful business person. You've made several movies. What's the next big outer world thing that you're working on?
Well, since you asked, I'm writing a book.
Okay.
The book is called How to Suffer.
How to Suffer.
How to Suffer. And it started off as kind of a joke of, because there's all these self-help books and you know, someone's written a self-help book and I was joking around with my wife about it one day and we said, oh, someone should just write a book. And it just intrigued me. And so I started writing this book on how to suffer. And when you think about it, it's the one thing everyone does, everyone suffers, and it's the one thing no one's written a self-help book on. So I thought, see, you're laughing. That's what happens.
It's really fun.
It's funny.
It's a great title.
It's a funny How to Suffer. And the full title is How to Suffer 10 Easy Steps to Your Life of Yuck. So, because I always have the 10 easy steps. So this is the easy step. So I'm 3/4 of the way done with it, but it's interesting because when I tell people about it, and some of it can get really funny. It's like, oh, you want to learn how to suffer? Well,
it's going to sell very well. I can tell you that.
Yeah, because it's the sort of thing if you're walking through the bookstore and you go like, oh, you got to be kidding! No, I gotta look at this. And the first part of the book is very lighthearted. It's very funny. I try to. There's cartoons, but as it goes on, as it progresses, it gets more and more to the thing, because I've been asking myself that question. What do you do when you're suffering? What do you do when calamity hits? And when you think about it, all the self-help books, you could say all the self-help books are just a way to get you out of suffering. That's the context. You know, oh, you want to be successful. Oh, so you won't suffer. Oh, you want to find love because you're lonely and you're suffering. So all the books, that's the context, and it's kind of like the gorilla in the room. No one's ever just said, oh, let's write a book about how to suffer.
And is it a learn? I mean, can you learn how to suffer?
Well, yes, you can.
Will you teach us how to suffer?
It just is, how do you want to suffer? In other words, do you want to suffer well? Do you want to suffer poorly? Do you want to suffer more? Do you want to suffer less? Do you want to suffer with humor? Do you want to suffer in silence, or do you want to suffer with everyone? I mean, there's like all this sort of stuff. And so really in the end is, with this book, it's like bringing awareness to it, because it's the one thing, you know, if I say, how are you doing? Oh, I'd have a crummy day. Okay, you had a crummy day, but really the thing is, I'm suffering. And the reason for my suffering is my boss fired me. But, so it's the sort of thing that really no one talks about. And I found that you know, if I'm having a bad day and Deirdre comes up to me and she goes, you know, how are you doing? And I just say, you know, I'm suffering. And there's like a moment there, and then often we just both start giggling. We start laughing. And it's by naming it, by saying that's what I think I'm just going to sit here and suffer for 5 minutes. I'm not going to try to push it away like normally everyone does. I'm not going to I'm just going to sit here and I am going to suffer. Not that I'm suffering right now, understand?
Of course. When do you think the book will be ready to be published?
In a couple months.
In a couple of months?
Oh yeah, it's 3/4 written. I mean, I just need now a couple weeks. You know, we're making a lot of progress on it, but we live in this town, Montecito, which is north of here. And I don't know if you're following the news. They had the big fire and then the floods. We got evacuated twice. I mean, it's been, so really it's kind of interesting, because we've been doing this presentation called The Age of Surprise. Oh boy, did the age come find us. Surprise, we had a boulder the size of a truck roll down into our property on those mudslides. So it's the age of surprise. So,
wow.
But soon it'll be, the book will be done, and then my suffering will end.
Excellent. I like to finish this conversation today, if you don't mind. I would like to ask you to just give a piece of advice to our audience. We're talking about millions of people all over the world, you know, coming from your experience, from your personal journey with your new project. So what would you like to just advise to our community, who, knowing that our mission is to increase the consciousness level of the planet?
Big question. Big question. What's the one thing? The thing that I've been realizing recently is, with our technological society and the speed with which everything is going, and the fact that, you know, people talk with email and this sort of social media these days, I think I'd say is, you know, take time to be with people in the room. Not so much through the electronics or that, or running around and doing that. The thing that I found with all of the stuff that happened up in Montecito with the fire and the flood and whatnot, it had a funny effect. It brought people together. We got to meet neighbors that we had been driving by for years, and now when you drive by, you stop. So how did you do? All this talking, and it's all over. It's happened everywhere, that connection between people. So my advice would be, get to know your neighbors.
Excellent. Well, William, it's been a blessing to have you here today.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. And again, this is Angel Ribo with Mindalia TV, and thank you very much for being here with us today.